everybody kind of wants to be the unicorn. You want to have this big exit. You want to be a billionaire or whatever. Or you want to at least make as much as you can. Maybe not a billionaire per se. But it's just as legit to be a small business that's making this kind of money, that's making profit annually, employing people and accomplishing your mission.
This is the Startup Different podcast. From scrappy founders to 8-figure success stories, we're busting apart startup myths, getting raw insights from battle-tested entrepreneurs, and revealing the proven playbook for bootstrapping your way to 5 million with no VC strings attached.
This week, we go deep on our interview with Natalie Kaminski of JetRockets. We dig into the mighty middle, the Russia-Ukraine war, and taking all the work you can find. It's Startup Different. Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Startup Different. I am the fabulous David Sigurdsson. Christopher is also here. Chris.
Dave.
How you doing?
Good.
You know, I thought your shirt was green, but now that you sat down, the lighting has made it a distinct blue.
Yeah, I'm really hoping Graham doesn't like green screen my pants to the...
Oh, hey. Yeah, you do kind of match the...
Producer Graham, do not do that.
If you didn't notice, there was an episode last season where the Death Star, I believe, was destroyed on your shirt.
Yeah, my shirt completely blended in with the couch.
That was pretty cool, though.
Yeah, Graham decided to take issue with that. And
it's pretty cool.
You know,
I think that's pretty funny. I can't do that, so, you know, it's pretty fun.
Right on.
Hey, Natalie Kaminski.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Incredible.
Yeah, cool story.
I always thought like when we would have like a nasty lawyer letter end up in our inbox or get delivered to us, like that was like the worst, crisis
we had
you could
that.
have.
We had that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. But like I always thought that was like a real crisis, the country where your employees work is being invaded
or is going to war against like the country that you're like originally from.
Yeah.
Like very fascinating. So hang on, we're jumping.
Actually, I didn't even think of that
Yeah,
part.
no,
she was originally from Russia.
Yeah, Russia, and then was in the Ukraine for a while. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So let's just rewind for a second. So we had this really great discussion with Natalie about a bunch of different business stuff, but let's just recap it really quick. But folks, do check out the episode before because she's an awesome person and she was very, very entertaining. So the first thing is that her entrepreneurial beginning, she started in the Soviet Union. So this is where kind of Russia and the Ukraine sort of plays into it. Goes to Israel, goes to the United States, and is like in, I think, was it Minnesota?
Yep.
And so, that's a pretty big change. Israel to Minnesota is like a pretty big, obviously cultural difference, but also temperature.
Yeah.
As a Canadian, I feel like that's messed up.
Probably a bad call.
Yeah. So starts a career around the Y2K era. There'll be some youngins who are listening here today. Do you know, actually, why don't you explain Y2K?
I kind of know this.
Yeah. You're old
she got
enough for that.
job converting a database because the database literally had a 2-character year field, right? So,
like 99.
Yeah. So
98.
everything was assumed to be 19 something. So she migrated a database to a newer database.
How does
platform.
that happen? That seems like a huge oversight for the people who first, I don't want to get into a Y2K discussion, but people who first made computers, they're like, oh, the year 2000 will never happen. Like,
yeah, I don't know what to tell. I think about when the 5th digit gets added to the year field. There's going to be a lot of legacy code to migrate over at that point.
I will be long dead, but yeah, that's cool. Let this be the first warning for those people in the future. This moment. Anyway, so she starts out, she gets this coding job. She's not a coder, so somehow finds this job, which is fantastic, kind of moves up this company, does really well, becomes a COO one day. She goes from like junior coder to COO. I don't even know how that happens, but that's really fascinating. And it's one of those things that you hear about. I don't know how exactly, but I think it's like people who are really committed, who are really dedicated, who show obvious progress, who are good at what they do. They end up also often being entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Right. And I think probably they're like intrapreneurs in their company and they're seen as such, seen as being really capable. And then one day they're just like, hey, I'm just going to send it myself. I'm just going to go for
probably
it.
the employee that's coming up with the great ideas and things like that and really going above and beyond. And the boss is sitting there and saying, who's the person here that can take on a leadership role? And here's this person that is doing things that are way beyond what maybe the other team members
or even just being like self-driven.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those things that it's really hard to find in a lot of employees. And when you do find somebody who can act on like the principles of your company and also be self-motivated to perform,
right,
I think that's an incredibly valuable employee. So but those are also qualities that work really well for entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
You motivate yourself, you're interested in doing it, you're keen to learn, keen to take stuff on, and you do it. So it's kind of an interesting thing for her. So she goes off, she founds JetRockets, built this company, service business, and gets as high as 75 employees, millions of dollars a year, incredibly successful, saying yes to a lot of opportunities. We'll get into that in a minute. She's an empathetic leader. She's talked a lot about empathetic leadership, which I thought was really cool. And then there's two other big ones. So you already alluded to it, but this like moving the company, which we'll talk to in 1 second. And then also I really want to call it the mighty middle. So one of her startup myth that she addressed was how we kind of get all hyped up on these like unicorns and big things. I mean, this aligns really well with the show because I think this is something we're also trying to do here, which is call it that, your business that does $5 million a year or $10 million a year or $2 million a year, whatever, but that is profitable, is a totally legit business, is a legit startup. And that is starting up differently in the sense that you're not as obsessed over this like unicorn culture around startups. You're just out there doing it and making a hell of a living while you're doing it.
Yeah, your KPI is profit.
Yeah.
Not like revenue, but losing money.
Yeah, like doing it, like working your butt off, but not actually making any money at it.
Yeah,
you know
it's weird that is perceived as being like different.
Yeah, like with like the normal way. Yeah,
making
like
money. And,
well, we couldn't call it startup normal.
well, no, but I think the reality is that a lot of people think of tech startups like burn through a bunch of money. The whole runway thing, and then hopefully it works out in the end, and you are growing and you're in the right spot when the market kind of grows. And I think there's a lot more businesses out there that just go out with the purpose of like making a profit.
Right.
And it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's different.
Hey, we're taking a short break to tell you some exciting news. Chris and I wrote a book. Surprise! It's called Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business, and it's available now. Like our show, we're trying to pay it forward to our fellow entrepreneurs. The book busts 33 business myths, tells some of our most hilarious stories, and gives you many of our best tools to build, scale, and exit your business. You'll find the book on all major online retailers, including Amazon. Check it out. We think it's pretty great. And now, back to the show.
All right, so we got a good recap for what we actually talked to Natalie about and her background. But I want to start with this moving the company thing, because this is something that has never come up before, and I don't know if it's ever going to come up again. So her background, born in the Soviet Union, lived in the Ukraine for a while, okay, leaves and whatever, lives her life somewhere else. Has a bunch of staff in Russia. 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. And within like the first week, she is trying to find ways to get her staff out of Russia.
Yeah.
Like what? Wow. Like so many different interesting things here. Like first is just, I can't believe she did it. I guess is the first thing.
I kind of sit here and it is so foreign to us, I think, in North America, where we haven't had any real conflict.
Ooh, knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But obviously 9/11 was a thing and like very scary and all that sort of stuff. But haven't really had any real like war breakout near us ever. And I find that like I have a hard time thinking of myself as being an employee in a company and having the boss come to me and say, hey, war's breaking out near you. You're really important to our business and we want to keep our team together. We'd like you to move to another country and work from there. Mm-hmm. That is such a foreign.
Yeah, like literally foreign, but figuratively as well, like for sure.
I have a hard time just even getting my head around it. But at the same time, though, if there was a war breaking out around us, maybe I would feel very differently about that. Like, thank goodness I can,
we didn't have a war, but we had a global pandemic, and we took steps to protect our employees, and we heard them, and we listened to them, and we provided suggestions.
Good point. A lot of our employees moved to different parts of the country and kind of shifted around.
For a while there, we had employees sort of like scattered across the country.
Yeah.
We used to be actually a no remote option office before the pandemic. Like you were always in the office every day of the week. Yep. Which feels like a billion years ago now. Yeah. But yeah, so we were there. It's like similar but different. But I guess what I found fascinating is it wasn't just that, and too, we also had the financial investment. Like we bought people desks for their homes, and like we tried to do a lot of stuff to support the staff. But it was just fascinating to me because it was not just like this like logistical challenge and whatnot. It's that it goes well beyond the realm of what you'd expect a business to do. Like there's a benefit here on probably improved employee loyalty, probably improved productivity and all these other things. but it's also just like your values in action.
Yeah.
You know, like you're really putting your money where your mouth is. And I was super impressed by that because I think a lot of the time there's a lot of lip service around culture or around what your vision is, you know, those kinds of things, especially in not to be too disparaging, but among bigger companies, there's a lot of, oh, this is what we do here, or we're revolutionizing this market. Whereas in this case, it's like, okay, we're doing this thing. We have this service business. We take it very seriously. And I have these values that I think this kind of international behavior from Russia is wrong. I am Russian and Ukrainian, and I think this is super messed up, and I'm going to act on it in my own way in the world.
Right. Yeah.
And she just didn't want anything to do with Russia after that happened.
Yeah, part of her rationale was she didn't want salaries going to people in Russia and then somehow through tax dollars or tax rubles funding a war against Ukraine. Remarkable.
And you know, and she admitted too, like it was like a drop in the bucket, of course. It wasn't like it was going to cripple the Russian economy that she suddenly moved her team out of Russia. But she was doing what she could to affect it.
Yeah.
You know, like she was taking her stand in her part of the world. And I was really impressed by that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought she had said there were some employees who didn't want to go.
Yeah, like that makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
Right? And then because for various reasons, you know, they got their roots, they got their family, maybe they got kids, they got grandma and grandpa around the corner, like whatever,
Yeah,
right?
you know, maybe it's not like so much just moving yourself, but it's like the rest of your family, your extended family.
Yeah.
Like, I, you know, we didn't ask her about that, but I wonder if there were situations where, you know, the one employee was moved, but then the extended family also said, "Hey, we'll come too," kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have no idea. But it's very fascinating. Anyway, it was I really thought that was cool because she was putting her money where her mouth was. And it's one of those things where as an entrepreneur, and that was a really deeply personal thing for her. Yeah. But I do think this has a business learning that if there's an opportunity where your values can be tested or tested openly, like you better follow through.
Yeah.
You know, if she didn't do that, but let's say she'd be going around the office talking about how bad, you know, Russia was for doing this, and they didn't, but she didn't really take any action.
Yeah.
I think she would have come off as a hell of a lot less credible and probably lost the respect of some of her staff. So I think it's fascinating that it's a huge gamble, a really risky thing to do. But I think that for you as an entrepreneur at home, like if you have an opportunity to act on your values or on the mission of your company or something that deeply affects you, you should do it.
Yeah.
Assuming it's positive, but you know, don't commit crimes.
Just
don't go to jail.
Assuming you like, just for a moment, imagine yourself in her shoes.
Okay.
Would you have had the guts to do that? Make that decision?
You know, it's really self-serving to be like, of course, because I want to be as cool as she is.
I don't know if I would have. I don't know if I think I can be.
You
really honest
no way.
Because well,
sorry, no.
I think the first thing is I really have a hard time kind of appreciating what was actually going on then. Like I said, it felt very foreign. It feels very far away. But I think it's incredible the amount of courage that she showed. And I don't know, like I'm pretty.
I don't know if I would have done it I don't know if I would have come up with the idea. But if I had a staff member who said, "Hey, I want to get out of here. Can you help me somehow?" Yeah. I think maybe we would have found a way there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, and maybe then we would be like, "Oh, I wonder if anybody else wants to." I don't know if I would have thought of it. But like, she's just in really different shoes than me, so it is hard to be empathetic to really get that. Like we can't truly be empathetic to that issue because we've never experienced that kind of situation. So anyway, good question though. I don't know. That's a tough one, but at any rate, I think it's something for people today to reflect on, that if you have those opportunities to do something really significant that aligns with your values, to do it. So I wanted to talk as well about the second sort of like big thing from the episode, which is this mighty middle conversation. And actually I'm really excited for some guests that we're going to have in the next few episodes and some other people that are going to talk a lot about this. And that term, the mighty middle, is actually coined by an academic paper that I cannot source right now because I don't remember it. But it's this concept that, you know, most of the economy is businesses that are somewhere between $2 and $50 million annually. And that's a humongous range.
Yeah.
But it's not unicorns, right?
Correct.
It's and we think about, and that's kind of partially why we wrote the book, is that everybody kind of wants to be the unicorn. You want to have this big exit. You want to be a billionaire or whatever. Or you want to at least make as much as you can. Maybe not a billionaire per se. But it's just as legit to be a small business that's making this kind of money, that's making profit annually employing people and accomplishing your mission. And I thought that was cool that was the myth that she called out. We didn't like tee her up for that or anything. That was just her take. And I think for her, it's especially relevant too, because sometimes services businesses get a bad rap, and she's a service business, right? Yeah. And I think she's looking at going, look, I'm employing people, I'm doing great stuff, I'm helping other companies where customers are happy. So you're kind of like, yeah, that is super legit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. At the beginning of my company before you were around,
where was I?
There was, I don't know, I think you were in the woods or something like that.
Okay.
No, it was kind of a services business that I was running because I was building like e-commerce websites. They were bespoke. They were for a specific client, things like that. So, I've been in that game, and it's tougher. I really wanted to shift to more of a product type of business. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought she also said there were some tools that they had built internally to then.
Oh, that's right. She did have one product.
Yeah.
But I think the overwhelming majority of her revenue was
services.
Yeah.
But I think that's really the strength, though, for a services business, is if you can find opportunities to take things that you have built internally and turn them into products. So you're kind of hitting on both the services and the products.
Oh, remember, she's like really big on, and so are we, on DHH and that crew and
the 37 Signals.
37
guys.
Signals, and those guys, they made Basecamp. Basecamp was an internal tool,
right?
That they then spun off and sold. So, and they were, I guess, were they services before that? Like,
I think they were actually.
So you kind of understand that she's and she uses Ruby on Rails, which DHH, David Heinemeier Hansen, invented, and created. So you kind of like, she really much followed that model. And by the way, we're huge fans of those guys. Check them out; they are awesome. Check out their blog, check out their podcast, check out their books. They are not sponsoring this. I just like them. So
very aligned with their thinking.
Yeah. But I agree that it's a tough slog. But I just think it's important to call that out, though, that concept, though, that most of the economy is this mighty middle, because you just don't hear that much about it. You're not going to hear. It's like you turn on the news, you only hear the bad news, right? And I feel like the good news in the entrepreneurship economy is that many businesses do succeed in this $2 to $50 million range. They have great livings. They employ tons of people. They're the backbone of the economy. We should be talking about them more. Yeah. But we don't. We either talk about startups that fail or startups that are unicorns that are like 1 in a million.
Or that are unicorns and fail.
Like the BlackBerry story, like this incredible, sort of story. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more too about sort of this saying yes to opportunities. And I thought you didn't comment that much on it during the episode, but she talked a lot about how, and you could, even the way she started her business, I don't know if you recall this, but she started off, she was doing basically this like contract work, and then the person just liked it so much that they kept contracting her, and then she kind of spun up the business. She got help, and she kept going from there. And there was like one mystery man that like that we don't even know this dude's name, but that introduced her to her co-founder at a conference. Right?
That was interesting. Wasn't it?
It was weird. Just some guy made this connection, then just like was that God? It's like Bruce Almighty, you gotta just
startup God,
startup,
bestowed,
a
co-founder on me,
came from the sky. Anyway. But I thought what was interesting is that it's just like this hustle dynamic, where you just weren't saying no to opportunities. You were just going and getting them and hustling and doing your job and pushing. And that
was us. I think
it's a lot of startups.
Yeah.
But here's the counterpoint I want to offer for you. So on the one hand, you got to do that. But when do you turn that down? Because you only have so much capacity. I mean, she got up to 75 employees, so maybe she never did. Maybe she just kept going, right?
Yeah.
But
I think she probably got. I've always struggled with hiring people and doing as you know, we did struggle a bit with the culture thing until we kind of figured it out, right? Mm-hmm. But in the early days, I definitely struggled with that whole culture piece, hiring people, keeping them happy, and kind of it was because we were the player coach. We were doing a lot of the actual work as well as trying to be managers.
It was a big productivity hit. To try and train someone.
Yeah.
It was really tough to bring them onto the culture and all that stuff and take that time out of your day.
Yeah.
It actually got easier, I felt like, when we had more staff, but it was a little bit more dangerous.
Right.
Because it was like, okay, well, we have the culture established. There are people that adhere to the culture and understand what we're trying to do. They will, after I do the basic training, not like military basic training, but basic training with the person, get them to the next level of our culture. Where they kind of continue to fit. But yeah, she must have been good at that, I think, is the point you're driving to.
Yeah. Like, I think she got really good at actually being able to bring on new team members, make them productive, and, kind of foster that teamwork atmosphere within her company and keep growing it to 75 employees. Like, I'm really impressed. Like, a 75-person services business, that's a lot going on.
Got a lot of dough coming through that company.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and this actually dovetails well into this other piece. So she mentioned that her leadership style was, I guess what you'd call like more traditional. She said, I'm Russian, like kind of thing. Like, so it's very direct, and my wife's Eastern European too, so I kind of know exactly what she's getting at. Like, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do, and you're going to do it, kind of thing. But then she moved to this like empathetic style of leadership, the more modern leader. What was your take on that?
That I feel like I can appreciate that, because I think I was very similar to that, very direct, very,
But you weren't confrontational. You don't like conflict.
Yeah, I wasn't confrontational, but I think I don't know. Actually, good question. Maybe I'm not answering that correctly. I think a lot of times I would hope people would do the right thing.
Yeah,
and then
that's
when they
what you would do.
I would do it myself.
Yeah,
Okay, this didn't work out.
Management by filling the gaps.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly, which is probably really poor management, quite frankly. But you have to learn as an entrepreneur as you go along, and your personality bring some baggage with you, and sometimes you have to shed some of that baggage along the way.
Yeah, I think it's like around the question of like leadership styles for how to like lead your company. I think it's never too late to change the way you're driving the direction of your company, like the way you're leading people. One of the things we talk about in the book too is that when we're talking about empathy, is that it's hugely important. It drives a lot more profitability, a lot more productivity. People are less likely to leave your company. Like all these other great benefits.
Yeah.
And it's not as if you can't just like start leading differently tomorrow. Like if you're listening to this today and you're like, wow, I'm much more of the top down, you're going to do this kind of leader. Maybe this is like your like wake up call to like, hey, why don't you try something different? Maybe just try like a couple of days next week. You know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, just try and go, hey, I'm going to try, instead of ordering people on what to do, I'm just going to try and actively listen a lot more.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to try to, build solutions more collaboratively, or I'm going to try to be what you would stereotypically nowadays think as like a better boss, and just see how that goes. And it's funny because I feel like it's one of those things that just like innately solves problems.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you don't have to hire. You'll be like, why aren't we? Maybe you're one of those organizations that's like a revolving door of hiring people, and maybe that revolving door slows down a bit.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden people are like, actually, I kind of like working here.
That like leading with curiosity rather than sort
discovery.
of being, discovery
For sure.
Good term. Just to kind of be more open, get your employees more engaged and providing upward feedback to you rather than it sort of being top down. And like talk to employees and say, hey, where are the pain points in your job? You know, how can we make your job more pleasant? Like, what are the things you don't like doing? And
then it's like one of those things too, where you just, I know I already said active listening, but I just want to reinforce this again, that sometimes, because as business people, we tend to be like, oh, there's a problem, I need to solve it. Yeah. And then when you're having these conversations with employees, they're having an issue and you go into like solve it mode.
Yeah.
And
don't MBA me.
Don't MBA me. This is my wife says, don't MBA me. She's got a problem because I'll start going, well, you could do this or you do this or this. And she goes, stop. Okay. Because she just wants to be heard. And I think this is really, really important for people listening today, is that you don't actually need to solve all of these problems. I found what was helpful for most staff was just to sit there and listen to them. Give them a dedicated hour of, I don't know if you want to do it once a week, once a month, once every 2 weeks, like whatever, you figure out your cadence. But when you're talking to them, you're with them, you're listening, and you're not necessarily solution building unless they ask for it.
Yeah.
I'm having this problem. Can you help me sort this out? Just start by listening. Don't start by offering solutions. Start just by sitting there, and then you can work with them on an idea.
Yeah.
I think that works a lot better.
Yeah. I think they respect you more.
Definitely.
Like that.
They also trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems more legit. Like one of the hardest things to break through is like the fact that you're the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember with our developers, I would make mistakes. Software development, you're always making mistakes.
Chris.
Yes.
No.
It's true. No, but
where's the gong?
I would just, like when I made a mistake, and I would just, we'd have at the end of every day, we'd have a developer meeting. And if I made a mistake or something didn't work out that I thought was going to work, I would just tell our development team and I'd say, all right, all right, I'm going to,
That's great, though.
here's a big mistake I made. Here's what I learned from it. What do you guys think? What would you have done in that situation?
Leading with that kind of humility, though, is really important because it does a couple of things. It shows that you're willing to be vulnerable, so other people will feel like they can do it too. It also shows that making mistakes is okay. Like sometimes, like obviously you don't want to make a colossal mistake. You don't want to email your entire company their salaries so that everybody knows what everybody's being paid.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to, some of these things that might not be so great. But you have to leave some room there for problems.
I think sometimes too with software development, it's kind of expected. Software development is like write a whole bunch of code, hit run,
Compile.
error,
Yeah.
fix the error, run, error, and you kind of work through it. But yeah, when it wasn't a coding thing that I made a mistake on, or actually sometimes it is a coding thing that I made a mistake on. Hey, I built this the wrong way. Yeah. I used this data structure instead of that one. I don't know what I was thinking, and just owning that kind of stuff and having those conversations, I think creates a much better team environment with your staff.
It goes back to that psychological safety.
Yep.
All of a sudden, if the leader or leaders or leadership can be vulnerable, then everybody can be vulnerable.
Yeah. Your mileage may vary. Okay. Some employees still struggle with showing that they've made a mistake.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay?
It can be really baked into people that you can't make mistakes, depending on how they were raised and stuff.
Exactly. So I wouldn't say that there's, just because I was showing my mistakes, it necessarily made it, but it was more likely that employees would.
It helps.
Would
if you
share.
were coming in and pretending you were always perfect, then everybody would always pretend they're perfect, and then that would lead to hidden problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Cool.
So, cool. Really enjoyed the conversation with Natalie. Really impressive person, impressive business, incredible story.
If we ever have to move our company, can we move it to Hawaii?
Yeah, Hawaii or Bora Bora. Do you think they have like is there a WeWork in Bora Bora? Producer Graham, get on that. Let's find out. Let's move the studio to Bora Bora. I think that'd be pretty okay. Show up there for a couple weeks a year, do our episodes. Anyway.
Right on.
But folks, thanks so much for joining us. That's another episode of Startup Different. We'll be back next week with another interview. We are looking forward to it. Until then, find us on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and we will see you then.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.